Citroen is a part of a constellation of 14 companies which together form Stellantis. And last night I was being given a presentation about Stellantis, its plans for India, its commitment towards India, how it wants to expand, how it wants to export cars, etc., how it wants to make India the hub of its Asia Pacific operations. Now, during the presentation, they also talked about this new car. And while talking about it, they told me, if you see any potholes, if you see any speed breakers, just go flat out over it. Of course, that shows a lot of confidence, but the laws of physics work a little differently. You have to be careful when you are treading over stuff like this. You can't just go flat out unless you are in a rally car. Citroen has excellent rally pedigree, so I understand where they are coming from. Their passenger cars are also known to have exceptional ride quality, so I again understand where they are coming from. This car is proof of all of that. Remember how when the C3 hatchback came out, they kept insisting that it is not any of those mini or micro SUVs. You know, this is at a time where many other car makers with their jacked up hatchbacks will go to town calling those vehicles SUVs. And here Citroen was insisting theirs wasn't. And the reason for that is this, the C3 Aircross. This is their proper SUV. Now, it doesn't have all-wheel drive capabilities or 4x4, but you can see the kind of stuff that it is doing. You can see the approach and departure angles that it has, what it can do with all of that. You can see the ground clearance, how it's putting that to use over stuff like this. Of course, you and I are not going to be doing this every day, but this one is testimony to the fact that this car can handle poor roads, your leisurely drives to trails and off-road sections, etc., and do all of that quite easily, despite the hardware looking so basic on paper. The tech that will matter to you, however, is hill hold control. We've often found ourselves on ramps or on inclines where we've probably parked on inclines, and then when we have to get off, it's always a problem, right? Here, just long press on the brake pedal, it will not roll back. It will give you a little bit of time to pull yourself out. Bottom line is, the ride quality of the C3 Aircross is actually phenomenal. The C5 still has a bit of a premium edge, but this is miles ahead of what the C3 hatchback offers, and in certain respects even better than what the competition offers. And that is most important.
Forget any references I made to the C3 Aircross in my Suzuki Fronx review, because this one takes on the mid-size SUV segment. Measuring 4.3 meters in length, it's a fairly large car than its hatchback counterpart. It has an impressive ground clearance of 200 millimeters, some decent approach and departure angles, and a choice of 5 or 7 seats, helping it take on the likes of both the Creta and the Carens.
Now, if these basics have caught your attention, let's get down to the details. The front end, unmistakably Citroen. In fact, the whole silhouette of the car, unmistakably Citroen. But the fascia, the two chevrons take center stage. I think it looks quite nice. The face does have a resemblance to the C3 hatch, but this one looks more butch. Especially when you pull up in someone's rear view mirror, they're going to see a more imposing face than the C3 hatch. And those flared wheel arches, especially when you look at them from the head-on, I think they look brilliant. It gives the car a very muscular, confident face, and that works in its favor.
That said, the front three-quarter is the prettiest angle for the car, where you can see the contouring of the gloss black grille, the customizable squared appliques in the bumper, the pronounced creases, and the handsome alloy wheels, which remind me of the erstwhile Mercedes-Benz CLA.
The design of the wheels looks even better when the vehicle is on the move, and when standing still, I think these wheels fill up the wheel arches quite well. Speaking of the wheel arches, you get round wheel arches, but the sculpting on the side is angular, and I think that's a very nice, unique design touch. I think I quite like it. However, in terms of these rub rails, on the rear door, they don't extend all the way back, so they are not really going to solve the purpose in case you open the door in a tight parking spot. But overall, I think the side profile is a nice design. But that said, it does look a bit MPV-ish, and you can blame that to the flat rear end or the upright C-pillar. But in terms of the dimensions, this car is longer, wider, and taller than the Hyundai Creta, which is good news.
The tailgate has some interesting touches, like the horizontal applique that highlights the width and the sculpted boot lid and bumper, which adds sophistication. But the tail simply doesn't look as handsome as the front, and the stubby tail lights make it look more hatchback-like in comparison.
You know what? The third row of seating is actually removable on this car, and when you do pop the boot, it reveals a 444 litre of boot space for the 5-seater variant. And should you choose the 7-seater variant and remove those seats like I did, then you get 511 litres of boot space. However, if you necessarily need 3 rows of seating and a decent boot space, I think you're better off with the Kia Carens, because with the third row up, all you get is a mere 44 litres of storage capacity, which is, I think, not even good enough for a backpack. And removing the seats is very simple. All you need to do is just drop the seat, pull this tab right here, and the seat comes off, and it's not too heavy either. You just need to get the seat belt mechanism undone and you are done. As simple as that. But even though these seats are removable, you can't just buy a 5-seater Citroen C3 Aircross right now and then just buy these 2 seats and add them in later. These aren't retrofittable in that sense, because it runs a slightly different setup in the boot. The measurements are slightly different for the 7-seater versus the 5-seater. So that is a bit of a missed opportunity. I think if that flexibility was given, that would have been nice too. So you'll have to pick wisely when you're buying the car. Do you need 5 or 7?
The 5-seater simply uses a flatter floor. Otherwise, it's the same body shell and the wheelbase as the 3-row variant.
In terms of the design, the dashboard, etc., it will again remind you of the C3 because it is based on the C3 platform. So you get a similar 10.2-inch screen. It's got a slightly different color scheme for the skin, but the rest of the elements remain the same. Similarly, you get a different color skin for the different inlay panels. What we've seen on the C3 has a slightly different texture, slightly different colors. Here you get an option of 2 colors. There's this bronze, there's also a grey option that you get depending on the variant that you choose. What you do get differently, however, is the instrumentation cluster. It is fully digital. The colors used are actually quite subtle. The instrument is very easy to read. The icons, the way everything has been designed, nothing quirky about it, if you know what I mean. And I quite like the design. It's inspired from the C5, which also means that you get a minimal design mode if you want. So I quite like what they've done with the instrumentation. One missed opportunity, however, is that they should have now dropped in the climate control, which has been given the miss for the C3 Aircross. You still get a fully manual air conditioning, and like the C3, 1 is a little inadequate, blower speed 2 makes it a bit too cool, and that is where I think climate control would have helped. However, because this is a longer car, what you also get is roof-mounted AC vents for the rear seat passengers.
The 5-seater variant misses out on these roof-mounted AC vents.
Now the rear AC vents, they feel a bit flimsy. Certainly not as good as the AC vents in the front. I'm not sure if they're going to withstand the test of time, especially this AC vent is already not moving. You know, it's become a little stuck. So I'm not sure about the longevity of these AC vents. You get blower speed control for this as well. And just as is the case with the front, 1 is inadequate, 2 is a bit too strong. Now, roof-mounted AC vents usually end up giving you a headache because the draft is usually on your face or on your head. So while it does feel refreshing when you just enter the cabin from a hot environment, in the long run, it does end up giving you a headache. So you're usually better off with AC vents that are mounted on the tunnel console or in the B-pillar. Not a big fan of these. Now, as for the seating, the knee space, the knee room, excellent. Foot space is also excellent. The front seat is set all the way back, not just to my driving preference, but all the way back, and still there is enough knee room. Now, why I've set this all the way back is because now this is a 3-row configuration, which means you get relatively lesser space in the second row compared to the 5-seater configuration. And even then, the space is actually quite good. Headroom is excellent too, and visibility outside of the windows also quite nice. As for the backrest, you do get certain degree of recline adjustability too. So long distance comfort is not going to be a problem at all. And what I really like is the height of the backrest. I mean, just look at that. I'm 5'8", and there is still so much more space left. So even for someone taller, there's going to be enough shoulder room and enough shoulder comfort as well. That's a very thoughtful design. You also get adjustable headrest for both the passengers that are sitting on the either ends, but you get really tiny space in between and a little squab as a headrest for the center passenger. So this space is only good enough and safe for 2 adults and a kid.
The third row is for those who need it in a crunch though, which is why Citroen is calling this a 5+2 and not a proper 7-seater.
Now ingress and egress for the third row is obviously pretty difficult, but since you guys love seeing me in the third row, here I am. Not the best of places to be in, certainly not very comfortable, because like we saw, the third row seats are mounted on the floor, so you don't really get much space. You sit in a very knees up position. So this space not really great for adults, not great for teenagers either, only for little kids. And for them, this seat is going to be quite tall because they're not really going to get a great visibility. They might just end up feeling claustrophobic because you see the quarter glass or the rear glass is tiny. With a tiny kid sitting in here with such a tall seat, they might just end up feeling a little claustrophobic. So yeah, there are pros and cons to the third row, but in a crunch, not a very bad place to be in. For short distances, maybe under 50 kilometers, should be fine.
The third row gets its own cup holders and USB-A chargers too. The 5-seater variant not only misses out on the roof-mounted vents, but also the recline adjustment for the second row, but gets a center armrest with cup holders instead and a roomier arrangement. In my opinion, the 5+2 offers the best versatility and the additional features make it a more compelling buy, unless Citroen puts a ridiculous price gap between the two.
You still get a conventional key, again very similar to the C3. You do, however, get electrically adjustable rear view mirrors. The engine comes to life quite silently. It just tells you that the start and stop system is off when you begin. That's the only error that you could hear right now. And then you're off. Getting off the mark is nice and clean. The clutch needs a little getting used to. It's not too light, it's not too heavy, but it is a bit springy. The gear shifter has nice and short throws, so it's very easy to get used to it, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. And in terms of the visibility outside of the windscreen, excellent visibility. You're sitting fairly high up compared to the C3 hatchback. You get that commanding view of the road that you want from an SUV. So even there, a lot of people are going to feel right at home. Even newbies or fairly inexperienced drivers are going to feel right at home if you decide to go with the C3 Aircross. The visibility overall is excellent. You can see both the corners of the bonnet, so getting a judgment of the front end of the car, even in tight spaces like these, is not a problem at all. The rear view mirrors are again nice and wide, and you can see the buttresses of the car. So again, getting a judgment of the rear of the car is no problem either. The manual gearbox is the only option that you get with the C3 Aircross. In fact, you get only one engine option as well. This is the 1.2-litre turbocharged engine from the Citroen Group. Now, in terms of the engine tuning, especially for the city, we are driving here in Pondicherry. If you've been here, you will know crazy traffic, narrow lanes. You will have to work the gearbox every now and then, right? That is what you feel. But here, you can easily amble around town in second and third gear. You don't really have to keep shifting too much because the turbocharging is tuned quite well for our city conditions. So the crowded Indian cities are not really going to worry this car all that much. That said, an automatic definitely would have helped. But knowing Citroen, maybe they might just introduce it at a later date, depending on what the market response has been like, what the market requirement is like. And on a similar note, I think the fourth product that is expected to come out on the C3 platform next year is likely to be an electrified version of this very car. At highway speeds, the cabin does get a bit noisy. There is not too much wind noise, but you can hear a lot of the road noises, and even the engine noise, the powertrain noises creep into the cabin quite a bit. And this isn't a very nice sounding engine in that sense. So yes, it can become quite a noisy cabin. The highway is another place where you will appreciate the elevated driving position that this car gives you. What you will miss, however, on the highway is a dead pedal, because you see the engine runs quite relaxed. 100 kilometers an hour in top gear only takes about 2000 RPM. 80 kilometers an hour is about 1500 RPM. That's how relaxed the engine runs. and that is where you might just want to rest your foot and there is no dead pedal. And on a related note, the other thing that you will miss for such good cruising capability is cruise control. This car unfortunately does not get that either.
A 110 PS 1.2 litre petrol engine sounds average on paper, but the 190 Newton meters of torque thanks to the turbocharging ensures excellent tractability in the city and a punchy performance on the highway or around the bends, even with 4 people on board. You will seldom feel the need of revving over 3500 RPM. That said, fuel economy seems concerning though, with our highway run returning a mere 12 kilometers to a litre and city drives hinting a single-digit figure. A road test in our standard test conditions will reveal a clearer picture though.
Despite the ride quality of the car being so good, the handling dynamics are surprisingly good. The car is long, it's bigger than a Creta, it shows its length, the wheelbase is really long, so stability overall is quite nice. High-speed stability on the highway, lane changes, etc. is quite nice. But it does make you feel that probably it will not corner that well. And then when you actually drive it around tight winding roads like we are driving on the Chennai-Pondicherry road, the ECR, it is unbelievably good. The car is sure-footed, you know exactly what kind of a line it is going to arc through the corner, and I really like it. I mean, even for an enthusiast, there is something in this car. Speaking of enthusiastic driving, the steering does weigh up quite well at highway speeds, but it does still feel a little vague. It doesn't feel very precise. So that is definitely going to need a little getting used to. The braking response is also quite good. It feels nice and progressive. The pedal feel is quite nice. So nothing unnerving there. Even with a full house, it drops the anchor quite authoritatively. So that's good news.
The C3 Aircross is surprisingly good then at space management and the mechanical performance. But like the creature comforts, even the safety features are scanty. And the safety of the third row occupants is questionable too.
Safety is where it takes a back seat. A third row seat in fact. Because all you get is just 2 airbags. And there is absolutely nothing else worth really talking about. And looking at the kind of safety ratings that the C3 has got, I don't have high hopes from the C3 Aircross either. So that should have definitely been looked at more keenly. That said, Citroen is also in the process of setting up, or I think they've already set up, new tech centers in India for rapid development of low-cost ADAS technologies, which will obviously filter into their cars in the future. But as of now, 2 airbags is all you get with this car. Apart from better safety tech, Citroen should have also done better headlights. We've seen it on the C3 and the EC3 that these halogen lamps aren't really adequate, certainly not for Indian conditions, for Indian road conditions. They should have gone with better headlamp options, at least on the top spec trims.
What you do get is hill hold control and electronic stability control, but 6 airbags should have been offered already.
Let us sum this up then. The Citroen C3 Aircross certainly doesn't feel as low cost as the C3 hatchback, but that also has me worried. Now, they've done a much better job in terms of the fit and finish, though it is based on the same platform. It does share quite a few components. It still manages to feel a little bit more premium. But I hope in terms of the actual pricing, it doesn't command a very big premium over the C3 hatch. Yes, it is a bigger car. Yes, it is offering a more versatile seating. It's offering a lot more space. It is making the turbocharged engine a standard fit. But then again, you only get a manual. You do not get cruise control. You do not get automatic climate control. You do not get LED headlights, projector beam lamps, etc., etc. There's a lot that it leaves you wanting for. So like we've seen with the C3 hatch, it takes that no-frills approach. But when the C3 came out, we were also hoping that it comes out at a better price, which it did not. It still went up against the premium hatchbacks while offering a lackluster features list. Citroen insists that that offers a lot more value because you're still getting a bigger car in terms of the space. And if you sort of resonate with that thought, then you might be willing to spend that extra buck for the C3 Aircross as well. However, from where I am sitting, it shouldn't cost anywhere more than 9 to 14 lakh rupees ex-showroom, all variants included. If it goes anywhere higher than that, then it is entering a more fierce territory. one that currently is ruled by the Koreans, and not just the Creta or the Seltos, but even cars like the Carens and the Alcazar. And then it also exposes them to a lot of other competition from the Japanese, Honda, Toyota, Maruti Suzuki. You also have MG, and all of that is not an easy competition to go up against. So I hope that Citroen doesn't get too greedy. I hope they are able to price this well. I hope they are even able to achieve that price advantage and not just talk about the value gain here. If they manage to do that, the C3 Aircross could very well become the best seller for them at the moment.